Okay, here we go. This has been a highly requested subject topic. It probably is one of the most highly requested things that I've gotten since I started the channel. And it's not this particular video. This video has been requested twice, I think, but this topic or incident, I guess, has been requested a ton. So this is what we're going to do. The Swedish submarine that sank a U.S. aircraft carrier. I know about this incident. I don't know all the specifics of it, but I know that it was during some sort of exercise, and I'm anxious to hear kind of what happened. I know a little bit about the Gotland subs. I'm actually going to do a video later on about the Gotland subs, but I wanted to do this first. This is Dark Docs. I haven't ever done one of their videos, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say. Let's jump into it.
Brand new, nuclear powered, capable of carrying twice as many aircraft as most competing foreign carriers, and protected by an entire task force. The $6.2 billion USS Ronald Reagan seemed invincible leading up to an international wargame exercise in 2005. It was a stunning blow then, and a complete shock, when against all odds, a super stealth submarine from Sweden snuck past the USS Ronald Reagan's defenses and scored enough mock torpedo hits to sink it during multiple attack runs. The Americans never saw it coming, and never saw it leave. The USS Ronald Reagan is one of 10 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers in the possession of the U.S. Navy. The nuclear-powered vessel uses two A4W pressurized water reactors rather than the gas turbines or diesel-electric systems commonly used for warship propulsion. These reactors, like the majority of nuclear power plants, use water as a primary coolant, which is pumped to the core under high pressure where it's heated by fission energy. It then goes into a steam generator and is finally transferred to a secondary system where steam causes turbines to move and by extension gets an electric generator to spin. The nuclear-powered ship counts on 4 propeller shafts, which produce a maximum power of 260,000 shaft horsepower for a top speed of 30 knots, or 56 kilometers per hour. Since the vessel uses nuclear energy, it can operate for an estimated 20 years without refueling and has an intended service life of around 50 years. The aircraft carrier is capable of taking with it up to 90 aircraft.
Yeah, although obviously it needs supplied and things like that, they don't like to dock the ships a lot, the carriers, and so they'll have support vessels that will basically do all of this stuff for it. That's one of the things. So yes, it doesn't need fuel constantly. It doesn't have to re-up with fuel. That is true. Also, the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carriers are coming. There's been some issues and stuff, but there will be new aircraft carriers that are across the board, basically. But until just recently, and really kind of still now, these were it as far as the aircraft carriers for the U.S. And they really like them. I've talked about this in some of the comments, but the U.S. really likes the aircraft carriers. The U.S. likes air power. It likes to use air power whenever it can. And because of where it's, geographically located, aircraft carriers make a lot of sense if you like to use air power. So they really like them a lot. I said this in one of the comments. I can't remember which video it was, but it was super recently. That I actually listened to a guy from the State Department say, if you want to know when the U.S. is going to go to war, follow their carrier fleets. Because if they are going to get into a real hot conflict, they will have at least 4 carrier fleets in the vicinity of wherever it is they're about to get engaged. They're absolutely going to have them there. So if there aren't any carriers in the region, they're not jumping into a hot war. That was interesting to me because it shows just how much they rely on them.
aircraft, while the next largest non-American supercarrier, HMS Queen Elizabeth, can carry 70. The supercarrier is normally defended by escorting destroyers and even the aircraft it carries, and it's also armed with the infrared homing surface-to-air missile system RIM-116. The Gotland submarine is a stealthy, deadly silent, and incredibly cheap war machine. First introduced in 1996, this type of submarine was the first to use an air-dependent propulsion, or AIP, system in the form of a Stirling engine. Stirling engines use a closed cycle of compression and expansion of air so that they can provide thermal energy. Liquid oxygen supports the diesel combustion that drives the cycle, and in the case of the Gotland, it energizes a 75-kilowatt battery. The AIP system is incredibly silent in comparison to traditional diesel submarines, which in the past were viewed as inefficient because they can only stay underwater for a few days before resurfacing, resulting in increased vulnerability. The Stirling engine, though, allows the Gotland-class submarines, of which Sweden has a total of 3, to remain underwater for 2 weeks, traveling at 6 miles an hour. The diesel engine is only turned on while using the snorkel or surfacing. Aside from its engine, the Gotland submarine is packed with features intended to make it undetectable. 27 electromagnets are distributed around the watercraft, so that magnetic anomaly detectors will miss its magnetic signature. Furthermore, the hull is coated in sonar-resistant material, and the interior is soundproofed by rubber buffers. A passive sonar, the most common type used for warships, will have a very difficult time picking up the presence of a Gotland-class submarine. The Swedish sub is also easily maneuverable because of the 6 maneuvering surfaces on the rudder and sail, which allow it to swim almost on the sea floor as it advances and even manages sharp turns. Some of the downsides of an AIP diesel submarine are that, unlike the nuclear-powered ones, it can't go on for months without surfacing, nor can it sustain a high speed for long, which means that it can be most effectively used for ambushing a fleet whose position's been identified already.
Yeah, so this is, I guess you could call it a difference in doctrine for the U.S. and Sweden. Again, the geography of the U.S. has highly dictated the direction it has gone militarily. It's just not close to anything. You know, there are oceans everywhere you look. If you want to get somewhere, you've got to cross an ocean. Because of this, because of, you know, these sorts of conflicts, they're going to happen far away from your coast. And so they went nuclear on basically anything they could. The U.S. did. And it kind of makes sense, right? You want to be able to go faster underwater for a longer period of time because you've got a really long way to go to get to wherever it is that you're going. Whereas with Sweden, it's totally, the reason for it and how it would be used is totally different. And the diesel electric engines of today with the Stirling engine, they you know, somebody said this, I can't remember exactly who it is off the top of my head. It's somebody who comments on a lot of videos. God, I can't remember who it was. I'm sorry that I forgot if it's you. Somebody pointed out that it really kind of wipes away a lot of the disadvantages of the old school diesel electric engines, and it really does. It does wipe away a lot of the disadvantages. The U.S. just still wants to go nuclear. However, because of this incident, if there is any way that the U.S. could basically take ideas from the Gotland submarines, they, you know, as far as like not being detected and its ability to be quiet, that's a big deal with subs, as a lot of them are loud. Diesel electric engines with these type of diesel electric engines are quieter than nuclear subs because of the way that they work. So that's one of the pros on their side. But I'm telling you, if there's something the U.S. could take away from the submarine design to make their nuclear subs quieter, they took it. I can assure you they took it.
Or to defend bases in littoral waters. An open chase or uncertain threat may be better faced by nuclear-powered submarines. While the $300 to $400 million price tag may seem attractive, the U.S. Navy has repeatedly dismissed the option of obtaining submarines similar to the Gotland class, as most of the Navy's operations take place far away from the continental United States.
Yep.
It would be extremely difficult for a threat to approach the nation's territory without some sort of preemptive response by vessels already stationed at sea. Gotland-class submarines are generally viewed as more suitable for coastal defense. War games are military exercises for which resources are deployed in a simulation of what an actual confrontation could look like. These exercises provide practice for soldiers, pilots, and crew members, as well as an exploration of strategies, weaknesses, combat readiness, and the effects of warfare on a particular area without actually firing any shots or putting anyone's life at risk. Coordinating a war game with another country, or several more, allows for testing of different technologies, consideration of foreign tactics, and may serve to show the military might of the nations involved. In 2004, the American government asked to lease the HSWMS Gotland for a year so it could conduct anti-submarine warfare exercises. Starting in June of 2005, the U.S. Navy and the Swedish Navy began collaborating in training exercises in the San Diego area. In a press release by the U.S. Navy from the 3rd Fleet Public Affairs, Swedish liaison officer Lieutenant Commander Peter Ostbring shared, quote, "We are deployed here for at least 1 year and will conduct up to 160 training days at sea, supporting strike groups, individual ships, and rescue submarines, and participating in the tests and development of new equipment." During international exercises, such as those of Sweden and the United States, the national forces will not always be in opposition to one another. Different vessels will trade places or act in different capacities so as to assess the most mutually beneficial tactics of cooperation and to test how nations may fare against their own technologies. Speaking of the HSWMS Gotland submarine, Commander Ostbring also shared some of the ways the submarine was used during one of these war games. Quote, "Initially, it was acting as an opposing force, and in the middle of the exercise, she acted as a green, friendly force submarine, like a third country in a coalition, doing intelligence and reconnaissance missions for the strike group. Later, she returned to being an opposing force." The HSWMS Gotland has played a key role in enhancing the tactical and strategic prowess of the Navy, but it surprised the United States when during one of the war games, it managed to theoretically destroy the powerful USS Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, I'm super curious how this how this happened. And yeah, the war games make sense. Obviously, you want to be ready. You're going to use countries that could theoretically be involved in a hot war. And so you want to carry out these exercises with countries in a general region where there is a potential for a hot war to kick off, or who might be on your side if a hot war were to kick off, obviously, right? And you want to know, where the holes are, which this is probably more valuable for the U.S. than almost anything else that they did in the war game. The fact that the submarine was able to get hits on the aircraft carrier, because that would be a huge deal if a carrier were to be sunk in a hot war, and if there's a hole in security, they want to know, right? I mean, obviously you would want to know. That's one of the purposes of doing the war games is for stuff like this, so you can kind of see where the holes in your defense are. And obviously the Gotland found it.
The sinking of the USS Ronald Reagan fortunately featured no financial or human losses, as it was an unexpected accomplishment by the HSWMS Gotland during the game between the U.S. Navy and the Swedish Navy. The USS Reagan was escorted by a carrier task force, including several anti-submarine vessels. Stealthily, the Swedish submarine snuck past all of them, not once but on multiple attack runs, each time retreating undetected. Points were scored each time the Gotland was able to take close-up photographs of the carrier, simulating the distance from which it would have been able to shoot. The small diesel-powered submarine used its silent Stirling engine and quiet sonars to go undetected by the passive sonars of its adversaries, swimming right past the rest of the vessels not only during that exercise, but throughout the 2 years of collaborative war games.
They should have sent a picture of them, like, literally right next to it, being like, man, you know, we could have literally hit you with the sub.
Nuclear-armed submarines, destroyers, and carriers were all bested repeatedly, with reports of American anti-submarine military officers and research specialists feeling demoralized and slightly humiliated by the experience.
Yeah, I bet.
The result of the war game served to inform and improve the technologies and techniques employed by both countries, with the United States Navy recognizing that its armaments were not particularly effective to combat diesel-electric submarines, which are held not only by Sweden, but by antagonistic nations.
Yep.
The HSWMS Gotland had virtually managed to destroy the undefeated USS Ronald Reagan and established itself as an incredibly valuable military asset. One important consideration for the United States following the virtual sinking of the USS Ronald Reagan was that Sweden is not the only country implementing the Stirling engines in their submarines. China has 2 types of these, with a planned stock of 35 partially completed. In fact, Beijing has a Type 032 Qing submarine capable of firing off cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, which is believed to be the largest diesel submarine in operation. Russia, America's eternal adversary, has ordered 2 Lada-class diesel-electric attack submarines scheduled for completion by 2022. AIP systems are also present in submarines acquired by India and Pakistan, which are constantly in tension with one another. American allies such as Spain, South Korea, France, Japan, Israel, and Germany have also developed or purchased similar submarines. In fact, France is working on the SMX Ocean, a supersized AIP diesel submarine which promises to be a functional alternative to nuclear-powered submarines. With evidence of its carrier's weak spots, the Navy decided to ask the Swedes to lease them a Gotland-class submarine to study how to counter its stealth mechanisms, despite the fact that America will most likely remain at peace with the majority of these nations. The Swedish government accepted to lend its HSWMS Gotland commanded and manned beyond the original year-long sets of war games for an additional 12 months, allowing the United States to figure out strategies to combat it, and whether it should acquire a similar submarine.
I'm telling you, I bet my right arm that if there was anything they could take from that on how to make their nuclear subs more quiet, they took it. There is not a doubt in my mind. They were scouring everything they could to figure out if there was something they could use. And obviously they want to plug that hole in their defenses. If they had no idea where it was, how close it got, how many times it got through, the carrier task force, yeah, I mean, that was cool for the Swedes to play along, though, and be like, because they don't have a ton of them. They're obviously valuable to the Swedes. It would have been really easy to be like, we're not super comfortable with that. So it was cool that they let them.
Although after extensive research, the Navy concluded that it preferred to continue using and developing nuclear-powered submarines. The Pentagon saw little use for diesel-electric watercraft, since the majority of patrolling operations are done near Asian and European waters, meaning that traversing oceans from the United States would require constant refueling. In fact, when the Gotland itself was returned to Sweden, it was actually shipped on a mobile dry dock instead of being transported under its own power. Still, the United States Navy learned valuable lessons from seeing its massive supercarrier and accompanying fleet be bested by a small, Swedish diesel-electric submarine. Today, the U.S. remains wary of further technological improvements, particularly by China, that may increase the range of these silent subs and threaten U.S. patrols in the seas around Asia.
Okay, so that was Dark Docks, the Swedish submarine that sank a U.S. aircraft carrier. Yeah, I mean, I talked about it towards the beginning. If you're going to be doing operations way away from your coast, nuclear subs sort of make more sense. I mean, It just kind of is it's the blessing and curse of the geography of the U.S. The blessing is you're kind of defended by just where you are. You know, that's kind of a big part of your defense. Um, Obviously, the con of that is if you want to get anywhere, it's you got to cross an ocean. You know, so really good video. There's another one like this. I can't remember what exactly it's called, but it's something along the lines of uh, Swedish fighter jets and the U.S. Blackbird. And I can't remember what exactly it was, but it's a video that's on my list that I'm going to get to soon. But, you know, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I appreciate all the support and comments and context and everything. It's awesome. But, yeah, I'll see you all next time.